Happy Saturday. Good morning. It's a Saturday show. Christian Esparza here. Alex Napoles, double duty, producing and co-hosting on the other side of the glass. Man, what a busy Friday night it was. And we will get to our reaction soon enough. First off, Arizona State beat Utah last night, 27-19, and we'll have plenty of hot takes and reactions. We're going to let you hear from Kyle Whittingham and Cam Rising and Junior Tafuna after the game. Some raw emotion from Utah's head coach and players. So we'll get to that coming up. Before we do, though, we'll start things off how we normally do with our highlights of the week. And then we'll start off happy and then get sad. How about that, Alex? What's your highlight of the week?
Hey, let's do it, man. Highlight of the week, I mean, it has to be just what happened here on Tuesday in Salt Lake City, right across the street from us, Christian, with the inaugural game of the Utah Hockey Club, right? That's the highlight week for just about everyone.
Yeah. Oh, how much fun was that? And, I mean, I wasn't able to go to the game, but I went to some of the pregame celebration in the plaza beforehand and the free Shabuzi concert. And it's just so much fun to have this hockey team here. And we'll be talking more about them coming up around 10:30. We'll get into some reaction. But 2-0, and that first game on Tuesday night was so much fun. And it was just palpable everywhere. You can feel in the TV broadcast even, or the radio call here on the Zone, or if you were watching on Utah Hockey Club Plus or SEG Plus, however you consumed it, or maybe you were there in person and obviously you were part of it. It's so much fun to have something shiny and new, and you could just tell that everybody's excited and everybody wants to be a part of it, and the players are feeding off of that energy too. And as a community, I mean, there's a lot of hockey fans here in Utah, and they haven't been able to consume their sport the way that they wanted. But now they do, and we love our hockey team, and it's been fun. So, yeah, Tuesday night was such a huge success.
It was a great success. Got here super early because I thought there was going to be, shut down streets and traffic. And I got in and out of the building pretty quickly, so that allowed me to, go walk over and see the crowd and just walk around the plaza for a little bit. And there was a lot of people, man. It was good to see Utah show up for hockey.
There were so many people, and I'm sure there were a lot of people just like me and, didn't have tickets at the game, but free celebration right outside the Delta Center. And that's what you do, right? That's how you get people to show support for the team, show out and show up, and free stuff. It didn't cost anything to go out there and have some fun and be a part of this. And
absolutely.
Then I went home and watched the game, and man, I can't wait to talk some hockey later because, I definitely agree. I'll steal your highlight too. That was my highlight of the week for sure, because as far as last night, things were rough. Right?
Yeah, let's get into the sad stuff.
So I was producing Utah State last night. That game didn't go well either. They lost to UNLV. What was the final here? I kind of shut it out of my memory. They lost to UNLV 50-34.
That rough, huh? You already got it out of there.
I moved on pretty quickly. So I was producing that game, but on the other side of me, we had the Utah game going on, and Utah coming off. They lost to Arizona, right? And then they had the bye week, and they were supposed to get back on track last night against Arizona State in Tempe. And let's just say things did not go according to plan, Alex. The Utes lost 27-19. Cam Rising did make his return to the team, went out there on the first snap, but man, did he struggle. It was almost as bad as you can. It was probably the worst that we've seen Cam Rising play, right?
Oh, for sure.
16 of 37. That's 43% completion percentage, 209 yards, and 3 picks.
QB rating of 29.3.
Whew. It was, and I mean, there is a little bit of a caveat. Okay, he got hurt early on. He got rolled up. Scary leg injury. I don't know how he didn't tear anything. I don't know how he was able to return to the field after that. He got hit and kind of his leg got trapped under a player, and his ankle, watching the slow-mo replay, it looks like his ankle bent in a way that it was not meant to be bent. So Cam Rising's struggles, was it his finger? Is his throwing hand not healthy? Was it his leg? Is he rusty because he's barely played over the last 2 years? Like, there are so many things that could be impacting this performance, but the bottom line is they could not get it done. And we're going to play Kyle Whittingham coming up here shortly, but Alex, you cannot win games kicking field goals. And Kyle Whittingham's going to say that. Cam's going to say that. That's what it comes down to. And Utah's offense did not show up last night.
No, and we're going to be having a similar conversation to the one that we had when they played Arizona here in Salt Lake, where you have opportunities in the red zone and you just can't capitalize.
Yeah.
Utah's offense in the red zone has struggled this year, and we saw it again last night, where you have opportunities in the red zone early in the game and you're just not able to capitalize. You're not able to find the end zone. You're not able to get touchdowns, and early on in the game, I think that really obviously hurts Utah.
So not quite red zone, but Utah crossed Arizona's 30-yard line 7 times, but only one of those drives resulted in a touchdown. Cam threw an interception at Arizona's 9-yard line. The Utes had a turnover on downs, and then the rest of those drives, they settled for field goals. This is a team that, again, they were picked to win the Big 12 coming in. You're not going to win anything with offensive production like that. And just this, like you said, the same stuff we were talking about last week, struggling in the red zone, struggling to get a push, struggling to move the ball through the air. Mekhi Bernard, the lone bright spot on offense, 129 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He also added 61 yards on 5 catches, so nearly 200 total yards of offense for Bernard. But
we have to give Mekhi Bernard some flowers.
Yeah.
Because he was the biggest bright spot on that Utah offense last night.
He was all they had.
He was carrying that team on his back.
And another bright spot was Brent Keithy playing Wildcat.
Yeah.
Right. No, and that's some more of the frustrating stuff. It's like, what are they doing with the play call? Why they put Brent Keithy in as the Wildcat quarterback on, what was it, like the 2-yard line?
They did one from even further back too. They did it They tried to do it a couple times.
So
and
more than once.
It was more than once, yes. And I think the first one, if I remember right, got stuffed. And then after that, anytime Keithy would line up in the Wildcat, Dillingham would call a timeout and change up his defensive look to make sure that Brant Keithy couldn't do anything.
So I really, really want to know what that was about. I mean, did Ludwig see something on tape? I mean, it's not like Brant Keithy is this freak of nature athlete that's bigger, stronger, faster than everybody. I mean, he's a really good tight end, and he's really good in space, and being that sort of weapon in the receiving game. And I'd argue that Brant Keithy is way more valuable doing that than putting him in at the Wildcat quarterback. I mean, if you want to run Wildcat, why not have Bernard do it?
I agree.
So I really have no idea what that was.
And look, Christian, I think obviously the spotlight's going to be on that offense, Cam Rising's return, the big storyline. However, I think we also got to talk about the defense. And because the defense was out-physicaled against Arizona, and I truly believe they were out-physicaled again last night against Arizona State.
Yeah. I mean, obviously some stats. The running back, Cam Scatabo, he iced the game, man. He did. 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, and those 2 touchdowns came late in the fourth quarter. A 50-yard touchdown run, and then 2 drives later, a 47-yard touchdown run. So that, to me, that shows the Utah defense bending, and then just breaking.
Yep.
That's what that is. And it's tough because up until that point, I mean, you're allowing 13 points, right, to Arizona. And your offense can't – the offense is not getting any production. And late in the fourth quarter, it's just frustrating. And then you break. You allow the touchdown runs, the long touchdown runs, and it seems like the team is falling apart. And this is something that has been a worry that we've seen every time Cam Rising goes out, every time he's hurt or leaves a game. It's like the team just crumbles. They don't know what to do. And it's amazing to me that one player can have that much of an impact. I know Cam Rising is a great quarterback for this program, and he's done so many great things and led them to Pac-12 championships, plural, and Rose Bowl appearances, plural. Like, that's awesome, and I don't want to take that away from him, but it's just crazy to me how they seem to just roll over and die and I know he didn't leave the game last night, but it's like that was not Cam Rising playing. That was a shell of Cam Rising.
He was clearly not 100%.
No, he wasn't, and it's just clear that everybody was frustrated. Everybody's had enough, and yeah, just a rough game. One of the worst performances that we've seen from this Utah team in recent memory. I know the loss to Arizona sucked, but it was like, okay, kind of a trap game where let's go into the bye week and fix things. But to follow that up with this sort of performance, it's really, really gut-wrenching.
They lacked bite, I feel.
Yeah.
They lacked bite. Usually when Utah loses, they come back the next game and there's fight. There's a bite to this team. There's a chip on its shoulder to prove, to come back and bounce back. But this one, I think there was early offensive struggles and there was early defensive struggles, and I think they just carried through the whole game. We didn't see much of a bite from Utah.
No, not at all. And they just, Utah has this reputation for being tough, being resilient, having an edge. And you're right, Alex. They came out and they had none of that. And I don't know if it's because they lacked production from the start, right? I don't know exactly where it started, but it's clear that it just snowballed and continued to get worse and worse. They settled for a field goal on their first drive. That's not the worst thing in the world. And then they kicked a field goal on their second drive after Junior Tafuna had a nice touchdown, right? And then it seems like after that, they got worse. It went downhill. So
in those situations where Tafuna gets the interception and you're deep inside Arizona State territory, you have to capitalize on those.
To not turn that into anything, you get points from the field goal, but it's right. Like, you're right. That's free field position.
Those situations, you have to get into the end zone. You have to score a touchdown.
Yeah.
Because not only does it fire you up, not only does it give you confidence, but obviously it allows you to go from having a 6-point lead to a 10-point lead, and it just makes that a little bit more difficult for Arizona State.
Yeah, but it was a great play by Tafuna. I do want to give a shout out to Junior Tafuna. Really good play by him. He basically was stiff-arming an offensive lineman, was able to reach out with his left hand and really make a play. So that was cool. But then, again, kind of just all downhill from there. Alex, let's get to some post-game sound because the game got over late last night, right? We had the Utah post-game show, and I'm not sure if we were able to play that last night. I think the sound might have come in afterwards. So let's start with Kyle Whittingham. This is Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham addressing the media last night after that tough loss to Arizona State.
All right, very similar conversation to what we had after the Arizona game. Got out rushed. We were awful in the red zone. I lost the turnover margin. Missed a bunch of tackles. And so, unfortunately, and very disappointingly, it's the same storyline. And as long as we have our woes in the red zone, we may not win another game this season until we get it fixed. That's how important it is. It was not due to lack of time spent on it. Tripled the practice amount of time over the last 2 weeks. And again, very disappointing that we didn't see better results. You cannot win football games, rarely if ever, with a bunch of field goals. You just can't. It just doesn't work. We had 4 field goals, and that's as negative as it is a positive because you can't win kicking field goals as a general rule. And so we've got our work cut out for us. We're a good football team. I firmly believe that. But again, shame on us for having the same storyline 2 games in a row. And give them credit. The tailback was tremendous. Number 4, Scatabo, well over 150 plus yards I think he had. Made some nice plays on defense at times. Mekhi Bernard had a terrific game for us, nearly 200 yards of total offense. So there were some positives, but again, it goes back to the same dialogue I had after the Arizona game, and the same problems and the same things that we've got to address and work on even more, and that's where we're at. So questions?
Kyle, obviously you get Cam back, but was there any conversation maybe at halftime knowing that he was injured to switch it up? Or?
No, he wanted to play, and he felt very strongly that he wanted to stay in the game, and he won a bunch of ball games for us. It was very apparent that he's not at 100%, but it's coaching decision to decide who gives you the best chance to win the game, and that's who you put in there. And like I said, Cam has been terrific for us in the past, and you can see the rust. It was 3 weeks off, 4 weeks, whatever it's been. But he's a heck of a quarterback, and he'll bounce back.
Kyle, was it issues with his hand for the missed throws, or he took a hit there on that first drive?
Yeah, he got rolled up on really a lower leg injury that limited his mobility for the rest of the game. And of course, you see he's wearing the glove, so he can increase the grip, help the grip on the football. So that's he's banged up.
Was it more of the hand, or was it more of the leg?
I'll have to ask him. Tomorrow we'll have a conversation and find out. But he was adamant about wanting to go. He wanted to go. He's a competitor. He's a very competitive kid.
Considering the 2 losses now and the new injury to Rising, how much do you now weigh the balance with Isaac?
We'll have a lot more information and a lot more idea of how Cam feels tomorrow and the next day. Usually you can play through those things with adrenaline during the heat of the battle, but it's the next day or the day after when they really start to manifest how significant it is, or isn't, as the case may be. So that decision will be made as we move forward.
You have a bunch of guys out on the defense, but where are you seeing maybe the lapses that allowed for them to be able to run all over you?
Yeah, we run some zone pressures, and some of our slant guys got cut off. And when that happens, there's dead gaps, and that back is as good as any back that we faced of finding those gaps. And so, but injuries are part of the game. I mean, we had guys out, but the guys that are in there have got to get the job done, and that was it. The majority of those runs that popped were on the zone pressures. Not all of them, but the majority that we either lost the edge or lost an interior gap by getting cut off.
You worked on tackling in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
How would you rate the tackling performance?
Not good. It seemed like we missed 20 tackles tonight. There probably won't be that many, but we are typically a single-digit missed tackle team week in and week out. And we had 13 or 14 against Arizona. I bet we had more than that this game. And we worked on tackling in the bye week. We had full gear practices the week that we didn't have a game, and worked on tackling, worked on red zone. And it's not for lack of work.
There's some fans that rushed the field after the game, and it seemed like there was some interactions between players and some of the students that ran onto the field. Was there any frustrations on your end on how?
I didn't see that.
Okay.
I didn't notice that. I hope there was no physical altercations or anything like that. Is that what you're saying? There was
No, just like taunting and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. If you win the game, you deserve to taunt. You just got to own it. We got beat, so part of the deal.
Kyle, obviously there's a lot of emotions from your team, 2 back-to-back losses is tough. How do you kind of regroup from that? I mean, what do you kind of do as a coach now?
Well, you certainly lean on your leadership, your seniors, captains. Got to be better as coaches. We got out-coached tonight, no doubt about it. And we've all got to, again, it's very similar to what I said 2 weeks ago. We got to find out, each and every one of us, what we can do to be better as coaches, as players, how we can improve. We know our deficiencies. I guess that's a positive, but we haven't seemed to be able to get them rectified.
Final question?
You mentioned a lot about the red zone offense struggling.
Lot of unpack there, Alex. I mean, from the very start, Whittingham comes in and says, yeah, Cam was not 100%. That was pretty apparent. Not only did he have the finger injury, but then, again, the leg injury that he suffered during the game. I do like him talking about the rushing lanes. They gave up, I think it was 176 yards total on the ground. Again, Scatabo had 158. And it was pretty apparent just watching the TV broadcast. Like, these guys were losing the edge, right? The defensive ends need to do a better job of not allowing runs to the outside. They can't get sealed off. And then, you know, with some zone blitzes and things like that, you can't allow open gaps. And that's how you get tore up on the ground. And that's what we saw last night.
It's pretty obvious that, yeah, they just were out physical at the D-line. And, I mean, it doesn't help when you have a guy like Karene Reed out, when you have a guy like Connor O'Toole out, Keanu Tanavasa out. So many defenses, or so many injuries are beginning to pile up on this defensive side of the ball, and I think it's starting to catch up. And, again, I think that factors in a lot into that the poor defensive performance against Arizona, and now a poor defensive performance against Arizona State.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. They asked him about the fans rushing the field and taunting, and that was a big thing because Arizona State had a bad season last year.
Right.
And for them to be seeing so much success this season and beat the number 16 team in the country, and say what you want about rushing the field. I know some people are against it, maybe in that particular scenario, but Whittingham made a good point. Like, he says they win the game. They have the right to taunt. I thought that was interesting. But again, it's just so many frustrating things happened last night. And let's get to Cam Rising and Junior Tafuna post game. This one was about a minute. This one was pretty short.
Cam, was it the leg or the hand that was giving you problems tonight, or both?
Just played like that's about it.
Cam, what kind of happened through this game? I know you just said you played like what do you kind of think? Where did everything kind of go wrong?
I just wasn't playing well. I think the guys were doing a great job getting open and stuff, and I just wasn't able to throw down the ball and get it to them accurate, and just weren't able to move it because of that.
Junior, on your end, obviously you're missing a bunch of guys on defense. But what kind of happened on the defensive side that allowed them to kind of run all over you?
Man, just not playing well all around.
Cam, was there any talk at halftime, given your struggles, for you to potentially be pulled out of the game, or was there none of that?
Can ask coach.
Where do you guys feel like you go from now? I know this is back-to-back losses. It's tough.
One game at a time. Just one game at a time.
Some raw emotion there from Cam Rising and Junior Tafuna. Obviously, Tafuna very emotional after the defense struggled the way they did. Cam Rising pretty frustrated with his offensive performance and his personal performance as well. Played like crap. So those are his words, not mine. Sorry. We bleeped it, obviously. But it's an interesting conversation, and we'll wrap up this segment talking about this, Alex. Like, at some point, do the Utes need to consider benching Cam? And it's one thing during the game, right? But it's another. It's a talking point for the whole next week for the next game against TCU, right? Like, where does Utah go from here?
I think a lot of it for Utah is solved if you can get out next week and beat TCU.
You would hope so.
If you can come out and show that bite, show that physicality, show what Utah football is all about against TCU, you can definitely right the ship. However, there's a lot of discourse online about Cam Rising. There's a lot of discourse from fans about Cam Rising. And at some point, do you look at this Utah team and maybe think about how fans are so caught up in trying to replicate 2021 and 2022 when Utah won those Pac-12 championships and went to the Rose Bowl that it's time to overlook that and start building for what's next.
It's hard because obviously 43% completion percentage, 209 yards and 3 picks is never going to win you a game.
Right.
And Cam has done so much for this program again, but just watching last night, it was clear that was not Cam Rising. And again, I get it with the injuries. His hand's not right. His leg's not right. But it's just so weird now watching this player. There were so many clear situations where the old Cam would have tucked it and run it. And I know that we spent so much time harping on he needs to be smarter in those scenarios, and you need to protect yourself and protect your body. And I get it. I don't have a problem with him not tucking and running it, but he seemed a little antsy and scared last night. And I get that there's some rust, and I get that he's probably frustrated with his own body and seemingly constantly being injured over the last 2 years. But it's just so weird to watch this version of Cam, and it's not good for Utah's offense, and it's not good for their chances to make a Big 12 title game. And now that they have 2 conference losses like that feels like it could be a pipe dream. But the bottom line is you don't make a quarterback change unless you feel like the other guy, in this case Isaac Wilson, can give your offense a spark, right? And then that's a whole nother question, because it's not like the offense was a lot better with Isaac Wilson. I mean, even in the Oklahoma State game, like they were winning off field goals in their defense. And maybe that changes if you decide to just say thank you for everything you've done, Cam Rising, but we're going to go on to Isaac. And then that kind of puts away the questions, right? You're not having to deal with that all week.
Right.
You give Isaac Wilson all the reps with the ones, and maybe that does make a change. But, I mean, if this is going to be what the Utes offense looks like with Cam Rising, it's not good enough.
It's not good enough. No, absolutely not. And to go back and quote Kyle Whittingham from a couple of weeks ago, he says, we have to figure out what quarterback is going to give us the best opportunity to win, whether that's in 100% Isaac Wilson or a 70% Cam Rising.
Yeah.
And now we're revisiting that question, right?
Right.
Because last night 70%, or I would even say 60%.
I'd say
Cam,
40.
Yeah, that Cam Rising obviously can't get the
whatever
job,
that was out there.
Done.
Yeah, no, you're not going to win games with that under center. And
I guess that just opens in a whole nother conversation and a whole nother can of worms of, is 100% Isaac Wilson
right?
Do they not trust him? Do they not? Why didn't they want to go back to 100% Isaac Wilson?
Right. And you heard Kyle Whittingham talking during the presser. I mean, somebody asked him, right, why did you consider benching Cam at all and playing Isaac? And he's like, no, not really. Like, Cam wanted to play. Cam's a competitor, and he's won a lot of games for us. And that's basically Coach Whittingham's reasoning for Cam continuing to play despite his struggles. So I don't know if it's as much as they don't trust Isaac Wilson. I mean, I would say that's unfair if that is the case, because you look at things from his perspective, and he's really got the short end of the stick in this situation.
Absolutely.
with this whole deal. So again, maybe with a whole week of confidence from Monday's presser all the way up until kickoff on Saturday, saying Isaac Wilson is our guy, let's do this thing. Like, maybe that changes the offense. And TCU's a must-win game now. And
100%.
I never thought I'd be saying this about this Utah schedule, but this team has just lost so much juice over the last couple of weeks. It's almost sad watching it. Like, I really genuinely, it's one of those things where it's like I got to close my eyes, cover my eyes, and kind of look through my fingers because it's ugly.
It is.
But
it was not a good performance last night.
It's been a circus since week 1, or week 2, I guess. The week 1 win was nice, but man, I don't know where Utah goes from here, because I don't know how much healthier Cam Rising gets in a week. So we'll see. I can't wait to hear what Whittingham says Monday. Again, he said during his presser right there, you don't really know the extent of injuries because of the adrenaline and that sort of thing. So give Cam the weekend to rest, especially the extra day off. And I'm sure we'll get some more info on Monday, but then again, maybe not. Coach speak, you never really know what to expect there. So just a rough deal for the Utes.
If they want to make that championship game, they're going to need a lot of help as well as winning out.
Yeah, I mean, that's 2 losses already, right? That's what it's going to take. So can't wait to, I mean, again, we're going to be talking about this all week because it's such a big story. And then see if they can get back on track against TCU next week. We got to go to break, but before we do, I do want to mention that here at KSL Sports in the KSL Sports Zone. We are trying to do what we can to help out with the hurricanes happening on the eastern United States, obviously, all the devastation caused, and we want to do what we can. So we're partnering with the Red Cross, and I want to give some shout outs to our socials. You can go check those out, but we're doing a little movement called Hope After the Hurricanes, helping the American Red Cross relief. You can donate. There are links on the KSL Sports Zone socials, the KSL Sports socials, coming together to support the Red Cross in their efforts to provide critical relief for the victims of the recent hurricanes. The Red Cross, of course, they're on the ground delivering food, shelter, and supplies to those that have been hit the hardest, and they need our help to continue these life-saving efforts. This is our opportunity to offer hope and assistance to families who've lost their homes and livelihoods due to these devastating hurricanes. And together, we can make a difference. Every dollar counts. Your contribution, no matter how small, can provide meals, shelter, and medical assistance to those in urgent need. So, again, it's really important to point out, too, all proceeds go directly to the American Red Cross and their hurricane recovery efforts. Learn more, redcross.org/Bonneville International. And you can find the links to donate, again, on all of our social channels as well. So please, please, please go check those out. We got to take a break. On the other side, we will talk some brighter notes, Alex. Let's talk some hockey. Again, this is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Yeah, some of the best vision and hockey IQ on this team. Logan Cooley out there with Kesselring. Kesselring, slap shot, score! Dylan Gunther, the first goal in Utah's NHL history. Listen to Utah. Oh, they're going to like the NHL just fine here in Salt Lake City. That diagonal pass was broken up by the veteran Craig Smith, and it stays in the zone. Here comes Keller, 2-on-2. Right down the middle. Smalls, fans on it. They score! It's the captain, Clayton Keller. 2-0 Utah, and this place is ready to blow. Good poke check by Logan Cooley, and here comes Utah. 3-on-1 up the ice. Dursey moving in, drops it back. Gunther shoots, and he scores! Dylan Gunther's got a pair of goals tonight, and he's helped Utah pick up a pair of wins. An overtime winner for the Utah Hockey Club. And it's Dylan Gunther who lights the lamp and says goodnight. 5-4 the final score at UBS Arena. The Utah Hockey Club is 2-0-0.
There we go, Alex. Great job on those highlights, of course, from the first two games of action from the Utah Hockey Club. They won Game 1 against the Blackhawks 5-2, and then they beat the New York Islanders in overtime 5-4. Of course, Dylan Gunther, 4 goals in the first 2 games, on pace for, 164 goals?
Great start by Dylan, man.
Oh,
man. It's so great to see.
Obviously a budding star there, and that has been, it's a bright spot all around, right? But Dylan Gunther and his performance, just getting goals when they need it, has been so much fun to watch. And we're new to hockey. I'm not gonna act like an expert, right? But to me, it's so cool that we get this team here and we're learning these players, right? In the offseason, they're like, oh, Dylan Gunther signs an 8-year extension. He has 1 year left on his previous deal. So we basically have Dylan Gunther locked up for 9 years. And then through the first 2 games, he has 4 goals. And as fans, you just sit back and say, man, we've got this kid locked up for almost a decade. And he's going to be here. And that's so cool. He's 21 years old.
Already an early face of the franchise, man.
Yeah.
Especially considering that he's going to be here for so long. And he's off to a blistering start, a phenomenal start for Utah. Not only for him, but for the team itself, man. 2-0. They play again later today, but it's amazing to see this 21-year-old Dylan Gunther come out and kind of show up in the big moments for Utah's hockey club's early history.
Yeah, and the move here to Salt Lake, what a way to establish yourself, right? And come out and show these fans right away, like, hey, I'm a big deal. And I don't want to, forget about Clayton Keller, the captain. He had a goal in Game 1 as well, and he's played phenomenally. So it really has just been positives all around. It's been what a week to watch this hockey team. Again, they play tonight. They're on a bit of an East Coast road trip. They played the New York Islanders the other day, and then tonight they're taking on the Rangers, and then they're going to be taking on the New Jersey Devils on Monday. So fun times here in Salt Lake. And I do have a couple thoughts. I know we're all new to hockey, but my, these are some of my takeaways. And obviously, game one, they got out to a hot start, right? That's to be expected because of the crowd and stuff. But then they kind of struggled late in the second period and most of the third period. And honestly, that game could have easily gotten ugly fast. The Blackhawks were hitting the poles all night long. The shots were just not going in for them. And especially there late, they had one that bounced off of the goal post, and that's the one that Dylan Guenther took down and put into an empty net to get his second goal of the night. But it's clear that they're going to be riding on momentum for a lot of their games, and that's not a bad thing at all. I'm just kind of pointing that out. And as kind of Utah Hockey Club fans, right? That's the job, is to give these guys momentum to feed off of and help them get out to hot starts like they do, and then hopefully they can put together a full 3 periods, right? Instead of you don't want to see things get antsy like they did during Tuesday night's game.
Absolutely. No, you want, especially in those games, I guess here at Delta Center, you want to obviously put on a good performance for the home crowd, and you want to close out those games and not let it get to the case where it looked like Chicago might have had a chance to come back and maybe steal one here in the inaugural game. But as you mentioned, Christian, sometimes you just have to ride that momentum, and I think just from what I've been able to see for these first early games, a lot of things they need to clean up as far as like penalties go, and if you can win a good chunk of games just riding the momentum, I think the Utah Hockey Club is going to do just fine.
And that's what I'm expecting. Yeah. Just purely off of momentum, I'd imagine they're going to have an incredible home record this season. So that's going to be great as far as their chances making the playoffs. I want to point out, again, some more early thoughts. I think Connor Ingram has been a phenomenal goaltender. Yes. He has made some very, very impressive saves. He's been really good throughout the first couple of games for Utah Hockey Club. And, I mean, that's got to be one of the hardest positions in all of sports, right? Because not only you have the aspect of watching the puck, right, and having an eye on it at all times, and that thing's flying so fast, your reaction time has to be impeccable.
Absolutely.
And he's been able, he had that save during the Islanders game where he was out behind the net and then not really expecting the puck to come down, and he had to hurry and race around to the front and dive and make just a crazy save. So shout out to Connor Ingram. I'll say my last takeaway, though, from early on, it does look like they've kind of been getting out physical a little bit, and that's to be expected, right? Because they are such a young team. And I don't know what the size disparity is as far as Utah Hockey Club versus the rest of the NHL. I don't know if maybe they need to bring in some more muscle. I know that's why Spicy Tuna, Liam O'Brien, has such a kind of important role for this team. That's kind of his job, to go out there and be an enforcer, be a goon, rack up those penalty minutes. Goon, by the way, is a hockey term. I'm not calling them names. That's what they call those guys. That it's kind of their job to go out there and mess up the other guys. So, but yeah, I wonder if the size disparity again, and I don't want to say lack of physicality, but I guess their youthfulness, and they're still growing, right? They're still maturing. They're still getting used to the speed and size of this NHL game. I wonder if that's going to be a storyline later on in this season if they're fighting for a playoff spot.
Could be. We saw that a little bit through the first 2 games, but I do also want to point out the resiliency of this team, right? You're down, or you're up 2-1 heading into that third period against the Islanders.
Yes.
They score, they take a lead, and then your ability to come back and tie it up within seconds of going down, I thought that was huge. And to force OT, and then not only force OT, but to go on and win it in OT. Just an amazing showing of resiliency for this Utah Hockey Club team, and I think that's a really good sign going forward for this team.
That really, really says to me, like, great coaching, great, I guess, mental fortitude of the team.
Exactly.
Again, these are young guys, and they have not been in the league very long. So to go down like that and to just answer with the goal of your own says a lot about Coach Bear, about the team, about the leadership with Clayton Keller on the ice. I do want to mention, I mean, OT games are always going to be fun, especially for this team, though, because the way that it works, I mean, it's 3-on-3 instead of 5-on-5 in overtime, and that is a huge advantage for a team like the Hockey Club because Clayton Keller is an incredible skater. Dylan Gunther, incredible. Logan Cooley, I mean, all that extra space on the ice when you remove two of those players, that's an advantage for this Utah Hockey Club team. So if it goes into overtime, I would say more often than not, the Utah Hockey Club is going to be winning those games because of the advantage that they have with open ice. And I love watching Clayton Keller skate, especially with the puck. I mean, he is so much faster than anybody else on the ice when he has the puck, and it's really interesting to see that kind of difference, I guess.
2 games in, Christian, and I'm already falling in love with the sport.
Yeah.
We've
well, and they're making it easy by winning right away.
Exactly. Hey, they're 2-0. Hang the banner. They're winning it all this year.
Utah Hockey Club, and they joined the Vegas Knights as the only 2 teams over the last 30 years, I believe, to win their first games, or first game of the season, and then Utah Hockey Club, of course, went on to win Game 2. Game 3 is tonight at 5. You can listen here on The Zone starting at 4 with our pregame show, and then, of course, the postgame show following. So all eyes are on the Hockey Club right now.
And just, again, if they can just continue to string along some victories, it would be really, really cool to see this team start, have a big streak to start their season. If they can go, start 5-0 or whatever, it would be really, really awesome just to see this team continue to put out these gritty performances and these gritty wins and really build on something this season, man. Obviously, the fan base is hyped right now, and it's going to be really important to carry that momentum along with the fan base into this long NHL season.
Yeah, and it's hard because you start off at home against the Blackhawks, and then you go on a 4-game road stretch. New York Islanders, New York Rangers, New Jersey Devils, and then you go all the way across the country back to Anaheim to play the Ducks.
Yeah.
Before you return home against the Bruins, and that's on October 19th. So it's going to be a bit before the Utah Hockey Club plays at home. So it's a bit of a brutal scheduling for Utah to give, again, new team, young team. You give them the home game, the NHL season opener. That was so much fun, but then it's like, okay, here's this road stretch. Let's throw you to the Wolves and see how you come back after that. So, man, if they can win, I'd say 2 of these road games plus the win at home, you're sitting pretty. And then you've got some 3 home games in a row, starting with the Bruins. Then you'll play the Senators and then the Avalanche. So, again, let's see how they do on this road streak, man. But Game 3 tonight. Tune in.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I would say if they can string along 2, maybe even 3 wins on this road trip,
yes,
they're gonna do just fine.
Obviously 3 or 4 would be nice too.
Yeah,
I'd say bare minimum 2. Let's take a break. Get to technical fouls on the other side. There was a crazy call during the Thursday night football game the other day that I think we both agreed upon is our technical foul for the week. So we'll talk about that next. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Dirty shoes on your feet, that's a technical foul. If you switch the radio to some modern music show, that's a technical foul. If you touch the thermostat,
you'll get hit with a bat.
'Cause that's a technical foul.
You will feel my wrath.
That's a technical foul.
Personal foul, 69, offense. He was giving them the business.
A technical foul.
It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me. It's time for Technical Fouls, one of our segments we do every week where we reward people in sports or give them a foul, I guess, for being silly or stupid or just messing up. And Alex, this week we only have one because it's something that we both agree upon. It's pretty egregious on Thursday Night Football.
It was poor. When I love that the aftermath of this is just everybody pointing fingers and trying to blame the other side.
Yeah. So some background. Long story short, Thursday Night Football, 49ers Seahawks are playing. It was the 49ers that punted the ball, right? And then the Seahawks player was positioned underneath the punt. He was going to catch it. Then he just missed the ball. And then it bounced up. The 49ers players recovered it, so it was down in Seahawks ball. But then on the replay they're showing on the TV, it hit the Seahawks player's thumb when it bounced up off the ground. And since the 49ers recovered, it should have been 49ers ball.
Yes.
So they're showing the replay, and they're saying, on the broadcast, this is pretty clear. It should be San Francisco's ball. But then they come out, the officials come out and say, yeah, it's Seahawks ball, first down. And everybody was really, really confused. The technical foul is after the game it came out. No, it was during the game. They bring in the rules analyst, and he says, what happened was the officials on the field did not have the clear camera that we have watching on the broadcast. So you're telling me that this, I don't even want to take a guess at how much the NFL is worth, right? Hundreds of billions of dollars.
Right.
You're telling me that this business that is the most watched entertainment in America, you can't somehow get the officials the best camera angle, especially when it's something that's so clear to everybody else at home. And in a game like this where not only is it a close game, but it's a division matchup that actually matters. This is the number 1 and number 2 team in the division facing off against each other. So, yeah, this is a pretty big call. You're telling me you can't get them what they need to make the right decisions?
No, and I think it's even better that the NFL came out and said, "Oh, we actually don't show the officials the same angles that the viewers are seeing."
Yeah.
So
nobody knew that.
Nobody knew that. And so now we're at a point where we're restricting the officials who are there to make the calls and make the right calls and make the important calls like that one, and we're limiting them some videos for some reason.
Yeah, no wonder the officiating has sucked. They're watching they're watching videos taken on an iPhone 4S. Yeah, this is really, really weird to me because, again, they have so much money. They have money out the wazoo. How can we not get the refs these camera angles and the clear, high-quality HD videos that we are seeing? I don't understand why and how they can't make that happen.
I think it's a failure. When you have an angle like that one, like the one that we saw, like where it's clear and obvious what had just happened, and you're not allowing the officials to see that to make the right call, I think that's a failure on the video officials. I think that's a failure on the NFL because now that, like you said, that begs the question: how many games before in the past where there was a bad calls made?
Yeah.
How much does that play into that now?
So this, in retrospect, now we know that we've been dealing with this the whole time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's fun. Like I said, it's funny because the NFL is like, that's not our fault. And
no,
then
it's not our fault.
Prime's like, it's not our fault either.
Whose fault is it?
Everybody's just pointing fingers at each other. And at the end, the Seahawks won. So, I mean.
Yeah. Or no, San Francisco won.
Or excuse me, yeah, San Fran won. So I mean, if at the end of the day Seattle would have won, if the Seahawks would have won, I mean, we're having a completely different conversation, right?
Right. Right now we can sit and laugh at it, but if Seattle goes on to win this game, we're saying, okay, something needs to change.
There you go.
At the time, San Francisco was up 23-17. They recovered the ball on the 3-yard line, so they would have presumably been able to punch another one in and grow their lead. But as you point out, yeah, the San Francisco 49ers, they did go on to win this game, but really, really head-scratching move by the NFL. Why? Why would you not have the HD, Ultra, 4K cameras, whatever, man?
See, and this is where I look at a league. This is where I look at Major League Soccer and their new video assistant referee, the VAR system that they use. they put it up on the broadcast so you can see exactly what the referee's seeing. And I think that's super transparent. That's super cool. Plus, you have all the angles available. And so in those situations, it makes me wonder, if the NFL will ever allow us to see what the replay officials are looking at, like Major League Soccer does.
Well, until then, we had kind of assumed that that's what we were seeing, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But so now, it is a can of worms that gets opened up. Like, how many awful calls in the past have been made because of this?
Exactly.
So that's funny, but just a little. Unfortunately, that's going to be our only NFL talk for today. We've got a packed Saturday. On the other side, Alex, let's talk some BYU. We've got the Cougars hosting the Arizona Wildcats. Kickoff is at 2. Fox is there with their big noon kickoff. It's a big celebration in Provo. So we're going to do some BYU preview coming up next on the other side of this break. This is the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Happy Saturday. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles. Every Saturday, 10 to noon. Love doing this, man.
Me too, man. It's good to be out here and to share this space with you, bro. It's fun to get out here and yell into the oblivion and let people hear our takes and our thoughts.
Yeah, let's get into it. BYU, obviously one of the biggest games in the country today. They're playing at 2 o'clock. They're going to be hosting the Arizona Wildcats. Fox recognized how big of a game it was. They chose this game as their big noon kickoff. They're having a bunch of celebration down in Provo. They're saying that for the big noon kickoff, the crowd in Provo right now is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, that they've ever had. So that's awesome to hear. The local fans are out there supporting this team. BYU off to an insane start of the season. 5-0, looking to get to 6-0. They can already be bowl eligible if they win today's game. How amazing would that be, Alex?
Incredibly amazing, considering where we thought this BYU team was going to be heading to this point of the season, right? We mentioned it last week, Christian, where we talked about how the goal for this BYU team was going to be bowl eligibility, but now we're having a completely different conversation because they have exceeded expectations. There's been moments where they've looked really, really good. Still some things that I think that they can clean up on both sides of the ball. However, defensively, man, the defense of BYU has really shown up this season, and that's all the credit to not only those players, but to Jay Hill, who I think has done a phenomenal job with that BYU defense.
Yeah, it's been so much fun and surprises all over. But revisiting they were on bye last week, and the last game that we saw BYU play, 34-28 win over Baylor, and it was a little controversial because BYU only scored 3 points in the second half. It was a field goal that came in the third quarter, so they almost let that game slip away. How do they keep that from happening again? Got
to keep your foot on the gas, right? You gotta obviously at some point you have to look at the game and get a little bit conservative with your lead and start playing safe. But early in the third quarter, and probably through a majority of that third quarter, you got to keep your foot on the gas and continue building that lead. I think BYU got conservative a little bit too early in that one, and ultimately. Credit to Baylor too, because I thought they played a lot better in that second half, and ultimately that's led to them also kind of closing in that gap a little bit. And so you keep your foot on the gas, continue to build that lead, and then in the fourth start thinking about conserving the lead. I just think BYU got a little bit conservative too early.
You're up 31-14 at halftime. Baylor opens the second half with a touchdown. Then you answer with a field goal, and you're up 31-21. You have a 10-point lead, and you don't score any more points after that. So revisiting this, it is a little amazing that they didn't let this game slip away. It was so close to being a disaster for BYU. But you talk about, we opened the show talking about Utah's defense bending, and then finally breaking on those last couple of drives for Arizona State. BYU's defense, they bent, and they allowed some points, but ultimately when it mattered, they came up with an interception and iced the game there against Baylor. But today they welcome in this Arizona team that came to Salt Lake City 2 weeks ago, and they kind of caught the Utes off guard, right? And who knows, maybe it was more than that. Maybe this Utah team is not what we thought that they were. But that Arizona win 23-10 over Utah at the time was really shocking. But Noah Fafita played great. Tet McMillan did not have the dominant performance that we've seen him have, but he is one of the best receivers in the country. So do you think that BYU's defense will perform better or worse than Utah's defense did against Arizona?
I do think that they'll perform a little bit better. Mostly because I think BYU is a little bit more prepared in this case because we've had more to see on film from both sides, right?
Yeah.
And I think at the end of it, man, this Arizona team, it's been a little bit inconsistent with Arizona, right? You start off the season well, you have a really poor performance against Kansas State, then you bounce back and you have a really good performance against Utah, and I think last week they struggled against Texas Tech. So if Arizona can find some consistency and continue to show why Noah Fafita is regarded as one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 and why Tet McMillan is one of the best wide receivers in the Big 12, then we're having, it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a tough game. However, if we see the Noah Fafita and the Tet McMillan and the Arizona offense from that Kansas State game and maybe even last week a little bit in that Texas Tech game, I think BYU has a really good shot winning at home.
I do want to point out, I said Fafita had a great game. I want to clarify that. He didn't have eye-popping numbers, okay? 19-31, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. But it's more than that, right? You can't just tell the story of a game looking at the numbers. Fafita was making big-time throws when it mattered, and each one of them kind of felt like daggers to that Utah defense. And so if you're BYU, that's what you truly need to limit. Don't let this guy make his biggest plays of the game on third down. Don't let this guy, get Arizona into scoring position when they really need it, because that's how you lose games. That's how you let things slip away, and that's what we saw with Utah. So if you're BYU, you want to kind of learn from Utah's mistakes. As you said, right now the BYU team is really similar in what's the word I'm looking for? Culture kind of to the Utah team, and and how they run and their defense, even the way that the defense is structured and plays, really similar. So it's not like you can't learn anything from that Utah to Arizona game. Hans and Scotty were actually having a funny discussion about this the other day. They were like, man, do you think that Kalani Sitake or Jay Hill calls up Kyle Whittingham or Morgan Scalley and is like, hey, give us some tips from this game? Do you think that happens?
Probably not. Probably not a call, but there's definitely I think a lot you can learn from watching the tape from that Utah game, right?
Right.
And as you were mentioning, learn from Utah's mistakes.
Yeah.
I think Utah, one of the biggest things about Utah in this defense is sacks. They're really good at getting at the quarterback. They're really good at putting the offense in a hole by getting to the quarterback. And Utah obviously struggled against Arizona to do that. But I don't necessarily think that was a Utah defense thing. I think that was more of just Noah Fafita being a baller and getting out of those situations. And so learn from that. Learn how to contain Noah Fafita better. Yeah. And I think like I said, I think if BYU's defense can really show up and contain Noah Fafita, they got a really good shot.
And that is part of what makes him so scary. I wouldn't say that he's a rushing threat by any means. Speaking of Noah Fafita, it's not like he's going to tear you up on the ground like an Avery Johnson would, but just his ability to feel pressure and evade pressure. And
yes. He's an improviser, right? He sees the situations, and I think he just has a really good football IQ and really good vision to get out of those situations.
And just a sense of pressure to know, you got somebody coming on your, behind you, and it's like just the ability to have that internal clock and feel the game around you. But BYU's defensive line has been really good this year and a hell of a lot better than they were last year. And I think that is the key matchup of this game is, BYU's defensive line, their defensive ends, Tyler Batty, Isaiah Banya. Can they get home? Can they keep Noah Fafita contained? And then rushing, obviously, can they keep the running backs in their lanes and not let anything get out of hand there? So expecting a big game from the linebackers and from the secondary, but really I think it boils down to the defensive line and the defensive ends. can they do what they need to do to really throw Noah Fafita and the Arizona offense off of their game? But, Alex, you bring up a good point earlier. This Wildcats team has been really hot and cold. They scored 61 points against New Mexico. They won that game. Then they beat Northern Arizona 22-10. You'd expect a bigger margin there. Then they got blown out by Kansas State 31-7. Of course, again, they beat Utah 23-10, and then they lost to Texas Tech last week 28-22. So it's really, really up and down for this Arizona team, and maybe it's a matter of which team BYU gets today.
100%. And again, we talk about their inconsistencies, and are we going to see the Arizona that took on Kansas State that I thought really struggled, or are we going to get the one against Utah where literally even with Isaac Wilson in the game, like they did a phenomenal and amazing job of pass breakups and didn't allow any catches for any wide receiver for Utah in that third quarter. So are we going to get that Arizona, or are we going to get the one we saw against Kansas State? Either way, BYU has to be ready for a challenge. It's Kalani Sitake said earlier in the week, it's not easy for a team to go up to Salt Lake City to Rice-Eccles Stadium and get a win, but they did, and that doesn't happen by coincidence. That happens because they played very well. And so if they have to be ready, because if they do get the Arizona that came to Salt Lake and looked really good, it's going to be an absolute battle at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, and BYU needs to be up to the task to match that.
Again, though, I don't know. Based off of everything that we've seen in the last 2 weeks after that Utah game, of course, Utah had the bye, and then they lost last night to Arizona State. And last week, Arizona losing to Texas Tech. Maybe that Utah-Arizona game says more about Utah than it does about Arizona.
And it very well could.
It very well could. But BYU, I mean, they're going to come out and, again, all the crowd, all the excitement of the big noon kickoff. That was a big talking point throughout the week. Sitake wanted his guys to just focus on the game. He said, we can make this a big deal by putting in the work and coming out with the win. And I think that's the way to approach it. All these festivities, they don't matter to the players, right? It's a game. You're scheduled to kick off at 2, whether or not Fox is there with their whole circus. So it is fun. It's fun for fans. It's fun for media to talk about. It's fun to see on the TV. But at the end of the day, it doesn't impact the players in any way, shape, or form. So they've got to go out, handle these Wildcats. And I do want to say BYU coming into this week ranked number 14. Really? I think that's a little low. No,
okay.
I think they should be higher. Yeah. Sorry, maybe I should have clarified that earlier, but BYU has had some really impressive wins. I mean, that win over SMU continues to look more impressive by the week. SMU, they're the 25th ranked team in the country, and really that game against BYU, the Cougars won 18-15, by the way, that week. That's like the only time this season that SMU has been held under 20 points. Their offense has been amazing outside of that game. So that win, again, looks better and better for BYU. Of course, they beat Kansas State, the Cougars did, 38-9. So 2 wins right now over top 25 teams in the country, yet the Cougars are only at 14. I have some questions about that.
I do as well. But I think, we've been hearing all week about BYU's resume and how it just keeps getting better and better, especially when you have teams like SMU coming back and winning. Kansas State's win against Oklahoma State, I think, helps out a lot too as far as when you look at that resume. I do think, there's probably, in this case, I think we're probably looking at a little bit of a bias between the Big Ten and the SEC, and we're going to obviously rank those teams higher. But BYU, obviously, if they get the win tonight, they need to be there's no doubt in my mind that they need to be in the top 10.
Yeah, and a win today, I think, will solidify that. I hope so for the Cougars' sake, because what a fun story it's been for them, right? Not being picked to finish very high in the preseason poll. Everybody was counting them out, saying they're going to struggle to get to bowl eligibility. But if they can reach that benchmark, it's a 6-win minimum. And if they can get their 6th win in their 6th game, that would be so much fun. And really, their fate is in their hands right now.
Absolutely.
And their schedule softens up. You got Oklahoma State and then UCF, 2 teams that have really fallen off over the last couple of weeks. And then that game against Utah, say what you want about Utah's struggles. I know that we really, really harped on them in the first segment, but the fact of the matter is, for that game, it's always going to be close, no matter how good or bad one team is. That game's always going to be close. But then BYU will play Kansas after that game. They suck. That Arizona State game could be fun, but then you wrap up the season with Houston. So again, get the win here at Arizona, and Utah is probably going to be your only other big challenge throughout the rest of the season.
Absolutely. And, not to be cliche or anything, but teams show up for rivalry games. It doesn't matter if BYU are undefeated up to that point. It doesn't matter if Utah doesn't win a single game leading up to that BYU game. It's a rivalry game. Teams, it's a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
Throw away the analytics, throw away the statistics, throw away basically anything, because you never know what you're going to get especially in that rivalry.
So let's see how the Cougars do today. Again, playing in Provo is always fun. It's a big home field advantage, and the last time that we saw BYU at home was that awesome Kansas State game where they dominated in all three phases. I do want to see how Jake Retzlaff on the offense play today. Retzlaff going back to that Baylor game. In the offense, of course, 34 points. That's great. Retzlaff had 218 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 3 picks. Again, we continue to hit on those turnovers. Got to see that number get lowered.
Absolutely. It's been a big issue, right? You can't, at some point, it's going to come back and bite BYU, because you just can't lose the turnover battle and expect to win games. And I mean, credit to that defense, because they have shown up and they've kept it, kept the turnover battle close. But at some point, the offense has to clean that up. Turnovers, if you want to be a Big 12 championship team, you got to clean up those turnovers.
Yeah, you do. And no other easy way to say it. The biggest thing to me, you look at, especially one of those interceptions that came late in the game, 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Jake Retzlaff, like we had talking about, the offense really shut down there in the second half. And 4 minutes left in the game, you're trying to ice this thing, put it away, and you have Jake Retzlaff throwing an interception, and that is a big, big red flag. But I don't think that's something that can't be taken care of. Double negative there. Pay attention. I do think that Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator, and Jake Retzlaff will clean that up, especially in a game like today. I'm not expecting their offense to completely shut down the way they did against Baylor.
No, and I think, that Baylor game, I think in the long run will be good for BYU, because again, you can't take your foot off the gas when you're up the way you were against Baylor. And so you have to learn from that. You have to learn to continue to keep that foot on the gas and continue to get points, continue to build that lead. And once you build that lead and you're feeling better about your lead, then maybe get conservative. But you can't get conservative too early. And so that's a lesson I hope they learn. And I hope that's a lesson that they take into consideration, especially against this Arizona team, right? This is a team that Arizona can score, they will score, and they're going to score. And if you get too conservative and you allow Noah Fifita back into a game once you're up, we could be having a whole different conversation.
What is your final score prediction for this game? This is something we got to do more of here on the Saturday show. I've been listening to some of their other shows, and I'm like, man, we need some more predictions, some things to be held accountable for.
I am terrible at predictions. Usually, what I predict, the opposite happens, and so I don't like being on the spot when it comes to predictions. But I will give a prediction. I'm gonna go a close one. I think BYU wins 31-24.
Okay.
Over Arizona.
That's about where I'm leaning too. I think BYU will break the 30-point mark. I don't think they're going to be held under 30 points. I do think Arizona is going to be able to move the ball at least a little bit, but I don't think Arizona is going to get more than 3 touchdowns. I'm going to say 34-24.
Okay.
For my final, BYU with the win, of course. So again, BYU coming up later today. They're going to be playing Arizona. Kickoff there is at 2. But, of course, we're going to have our Cougar pregame show with Jake Hatch and Alex Curie live from Cafe Rio in Provo, by the way. Make sure to go and stop by there. They are going to be starting at 1. Again, that is our Cougar pregame show live from Cafe Rio in Provo. Tune in. You won't want to miss this one. BYU could be getting to 6-0 today. Can't wait for kickoff there. We got to take a quick break, though, Alex, on the other side. We'll hit 5 minutes up. We still got to talk about the Jazz and RSL and some other things we got going on today. So stay tuned. We'll get to that next. This is the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles. What a great way to start off our Saturday and yours as well. Last segment, we talked about BYU taking on Arizona today at 2. Fox is there with their big noon kickoff show. Want to hit a couple of highlights from there. Our guy Mitch Harper, of course, talking about Urban Meyer getting relentlessly booed by BYU fans at big noon kickoff. Urban Meyer says this is one of the most beautiful settings in the country, and normally people in this area are very nice, not like today. Apparently, he is getting torn up. I do want to point out there is a video of a BYU fan interacting with Urban Meyer, trying to get him to say BYU. Of course, he was notorious while he was at Utah. He would always refer to them as the team down south. It is official, though. Urban Meyer did say BYU. So that's awesome.
Feels like he had to say it, right?
The hatchet is buried.
Little professionalism, right? When you're out there, you got to say on BYU. You got to, or when you're on TV, you got to say BYU.
Yeah. Closeted BYU fan, apparently. Of course,
could be.
There is a Zach Wilson sign that says "I love Cougars." There we go. So that's awesome. That's great. I love, and of course Utah had the game day last year, and big noon kickoff being at Provo. That's so cool to see, right? Just the national attention because these games are big and they matter, and that's important for us. It's cool for the fans. So I love that.
Yeah, and I want to give a big shout-out to everybody down there in Provo, everybody down there at BYU for showing up. It's been a big week as far as for Utah, where there's a lot of national attention here, right? ESPN was here earlier this week for the Utah Hockey Club in the inaugural game. Now you got big noon kickoff showing up for BYU Arizona. Good on Utah sports fans, good on Utah Hockey Club fans, you good on BYU fans and people down there in Provo for showing up and representing the state of Utah beautifully.
Yes, sir. It's been really an exciting sports season for Utah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that we can continue this trend of being able to spotlight our state.
As always, let's get into some 5 minutes of Alex. A little bit of time to talk about a lot of different things. Let's start with RSL. They are on bye today, but they were able to get the win last week over San Jose. They won 1-0, but they are back in the win column. That's what matters. One game left in the season. That will be next Saturday. They will be hosting Vancouver, but right now, RSL tied for third place in the Western Conference standings. How do you think that's going to shake out after today?
After today, there is a game tonight. LAFC taking on Vancouver. I think tonight LAFC does win and secures that second seed. And so it'll be up to RSL to decide whether they're going to be the third seed and potentially have the ability to host more games in the playoffs down the road, or be the fourth seed and potentially not be able to host more home games down the road in the playoffs. And not only that, but it's very important for seeding because there's other bigger tournaments on the line that Real Salt Lake can accomplish. They can get a bid to the Champions Cup, which is the international tournament that they do with all the teams in North America. And it would be a huge opportunity for Real Salt Lake to be able to secure a spot and be able to play in that tournament. However, they need a win against Vancouver, and they need a little help from the other teams in the league to not only help their seeding, of course, for playoffs, but for that potential to get into that Champions Cup spot.
That's one of the best things about soccer, I think, is that it's not just, regular season, playoffs, championship. There's so many other things to play for throughout the season.
Absolutely.
So you never know, there are so many games, but almost every game matters, it feels like. Especially when it comes down to things like this and as far as seeding to help you in some of these international tournaments and things like that. But again, RSL is tied with Seattle for third place. Seattle is also on bye today. Next week they are going to be playing Portland. Seattle's going to be at home hosting Portland. So
go Portland.
Go Portland. It's going to be a tough game for the Timbers to pull off, but we'll see. Do you know the tiebreaker? Let's say if RSL and Seattle both win next week, do you know what the tiebreaker is?
The first tiebreaker in Major League Soccer is wins. Usually leagues around the world will use goal differential. However, Major League Soccer, the first one right off the top for them is wins, and Seattle has the advantage 4 wins against Real Salt Lake.
Currently, Seattle has 16 wins. RSL has 15. So if they both win next week, Seattle will still have one more win over RSL, and that would give Seattle the 3rd seed as the playoffs start. So, again, bye today for RSL, but huge game next week.
Huge game, final game of the season, and of course, it'll also not only help you with everything we just talked about, but we'll also be able to find out who that opponent is going to be in that first round. Will it be Houston? Will it be Colorado? We'll find out next week.
We will find out. Let's switch gears a little bit, Alex. Let's talk some Utah State football. They got rolled last night 50-34 at home against UNLV. Of course, that is coming off of a big loss the previous week to Boise State. Boise State broke 60 against Utah State. So really rough start to Mountain West play for the Aggies. But luckily, all is not lost because their schedule certainly softens up after this game. But last night, man, Spencer Petras, he broke Utah State's record, the school record for completions in a game, 41 of 59. He threw 461 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he also threw 3 interceptions. And that was the killer because it felt like those interceptions came at such horrible times. He also lost a fumble, too, as well. So putting up positive numbers in the garbage time, sort of, but really, really struggling on offense for the Aggies all around. And I don't want to place all the blame on Spencer Petras because that's not fair. He was really, really struggling as far as the offensive line, and there were guys in his face, and it was just a tough showing on all 3 phases for Utah State last night.
I think for this Utah State team, they show fight, but they just show fight a little bit too late, right?
Yeah.
They showed fight against Boise State, but that was deep into that second half, and you're already down by a pretty large margin. And then same thing last night. They showed fight. They showed a little bit of a bite, but it was just a little bit too late. And so I think for Utah State, not only do you have to obviously clean up the turnovers because the turnover bug has been hitting them hard this year.
Yeah.
You look at this UNLV game and you allow all of UNLV's points in that second quarter, and they're mostly all off of turnovers. And so you got to clean up the turnovers, and you just got to have that bite right from the get-go, not when it's a little bit too late for Utah State. I love that they're putting up points. You put up 29 against Temple. You put up 30 against Boise State. You put up 34 last night against UNLV. However, that just needs to come earlier.
Yeah, and the first half is really where the problems are occurring. UNLV was up 41-7 at halftime.
Yeah, not good.
Utah State comes out and they outscored UNLV 27-7 or 27-9, excuse me, in the second half. As you mentioned, they get things going. It's just a matter of too little, too late. The defensive side of the ball, I think, is the biggest issue for the Aggies right now. They're currently ranked 130th out of 133 as far as yards per game. And that number is certain to drop because the stats haven't been put in. 493 yards per game for the Aggies, and I believe that is before yesterday's game where UNLV put up well over that number. But really, really need to figure out a way to slow some teams down. But again, the Aggies schedule really softens up. Boise State and UNLV are the top 2 teams in the Mountain West Conference right now. So what a horrible way to open up your conference stretch. But then you play New Mexico, you play Wyoming, you do play Washington State. They're pretty good. But then you play Hawaii, San Diego State, and Colorado State to close out the season. So I don't know how many of these games I'd say are winnable for the Aggies because I still really don't know how to feel about this team. But the good news is it's not as brutal of a stretch as they've faced previously with USC, Utah, Boise State, and UNLV.
Definitely shortens up a little bit, and like I said, hopefully there's just a possibility to to be able to get out there and show that bite earlier against these other opponents, not only obviously to just end the season on a good foot. However, bowl eligibility is still in line for Utah State, right? They're 1-5. However, if they can win out, they can still make that bowl game.
Yeah.
And so I hope that's just where Utah State can get, and we'll see if they're able to do that next week against New Mexico.
We'll see how Nate Dreiling pulls this team together, because it's such a hard situation to put him in, losing your head coach 3 weeks before the season and throwing this really young, inexperienced guy into that role. It's hard. But luckily, I think for the Aggies, they have the pieces to make it happen. I want to shout out their receivers, Jalen Royals and Jack Hestera, 2 big games last night, 10 catches each. Royals had 155 yards and a touchdown. Hestera had 152 yards and a touchdown. And then Rasul Faison, the running back, 15 carries, 83 yards, and a touchdown. Faison actually got kind of banged up. He easily could have left the game. They were getting their butts kicked. They were getting blown out. He could have said, you know what? I hurt my leg. I'm sitting this one out. I'm playing it safe. But, Alex, he came back in after it looked like a potentially scary injury. He came back in and continued to fight. So, to me, that's awesome. It's great to see leading by example.
Absolutely.
On a team that needs it.
Absolutely. You love to see it. You want him to be healthy down the stretch, but if he is good enough to go and continues to battle out for this team, I think that speaks volumes for younger guys and for other guys that, they're still fighting this Utah State team.
Yeah. Let's switch gears again. Let's talk Jazz really quickly. They are in the middle of their preseason schedule. They have a game tonight, but let's see. They beat the New Zealand Breakers. They beat the Rockets. They beat the Mavericks. They are 3-0 in preseason, and then they play the Spurs tonight. And obviously it's just preseason, but it is pretty encouraging to see the Jazz beat the Mavericks in a game where the Mavericks were playing their star players. Of course, they didn't play a ton. Clay only played 18 minutes. Kyrie played 17. And Luka did not play.
Yeah, no Luka.
Excuse me. But, Clay and Kyrie being out there, at least for a little bit, I don't know. How do you feel about the Jazz's preseason so far?
So far, so good, man. I feel like they've shown potential, and I feel like they've shown a lot of good signs. However, they still got a long way to go, especially as far as the development of the young guys to really, I think, show that they are a playoff team. Right? I don't want to write them off this early, right? It's still the preseason, and they've had good showing in the preseason. So I just hope that they can continue to ride that wave, continue to develop these young guys, and maybe make some noise in the Western Conference. That's what I'm looking for in this Utah Jazz side.
Yeah, Taylor Hendricks, 34 minutes, only finished with 2 points, though. That's rough. Lauri Markkanen getting 29 minutes in a preseason game is a little interesting. 26 points for Lauri against the Mavericks. Walker Kessler had a pretty good showing, 24 minutes. He put up 9 points and 15 rebounds. So I think that's one of the storylines that we're going to continue to watch from the Jazz, not just throughout the preseason, but the whole season is, Coach Will Hardy chose Walker Kessler to be the starting center over John Collins. How much does Walker improve his game? And does he establish himself as a piece to build around with this Jazz team?
I thought Walker, like you mentioned, had a really good had a good showing. Again, it is preseason. We'll see how much value we want to put into that once we get to the end of preseason.
Right.
But he is showing good signs, and I thought Kessler took a step back last year, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing Kessler take some steps forward this year.
Yeah, how much does he improve is the big question for Walker Kessler, because he's got the size, he's definitely got some athleticism too as well, and he's got a nose for blocking shots. It's kind of just a matter of, can he get the fundamentals down, offensive positioning. Can he work on that? Can he work on his physicality? So we'll see what happens with that. But so far, that's what my eyes have been on throughout this Jazz preseason. Again, the Jazz are taking on the Spurs tonight. That's a 6 p.m. tip. You can listen here on the KSL Sports Zone. Let's take a quick break, Alex. We're going to wrap things up next. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Happy Saturday! It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me as we wrap up today's show. Getting ready for BYU, taking on Arizona, coming up here shortly. Again, we are going to have our pregame show, our Cougar pregame show. That starts at 1, so give you a quick hour break to go take care of any chores you may need to take care of. Tune in to Jake Hatch and Alex Carey at 1. Kickoff is at 2. Then our crew will be back with the postgame show shortly following. Alex Fox is there in Provo with their big noon kickoff, but we've got the game day picks on ESPN. Picks are in for BYU versus Arizona. Would you like to hear them?
Absolutely. I haven't been able to look at them yet. I'm curious to see where they went.
Desmond Howard picks BYU.
Okay.
Coach Nick Saban picks BYU.
Oh, okay.
Caitlin Olsen picks Arizona.
Oh.
Pat McAfee, BYU.
Oof.
And wrapping it up, Kirk Herbstreit picks BYU. So we got 4 BYU picks, 1 Arizona pick. And you know what? That is a good sign. Because when they all pick the Cougars to win, that means BYU is going to lose. So it's good that there's 1 Arizona pick in there to throw off the jinx.
Yes. However, Pat McAfee has been the reverse jinx, and every time he picks a team, they end up losing. So there's a little bit to look out for there. Is the McAfee jinx going to continue, or will the one person picking the opposite team curse not follow through, right? And have a BYU win. So we'll see.
Really excited to watch this Cougars game today. Another thing we didn't touch on earlier when we were doing our little Cougar preview, the running back room, healthy today. Kalani Sitake mentioned earlier in the week, LJ Martin is back. He is allegedly healthy. Same thing with Hinckley Rapati. So they're 2 top running backs. Of course, Martin has been struggling basically since week 1, right? And he played a little bit in that game, but then he left. So we have barely seen LJ Martin this season. Took advantage of that bye week to get healthy. So that could be a big boost to BYU's offense this year. They've really struggled to run the ball. They have been really bad rushing the football outside of Jake Retzlaff, doing things on his own. So getting LJ Martin, getting Hinckley Rapati back, those are both big. But center Connor Pay is out. So maybe those 2 things kind of cancel each other out. If your big man in the middle is not there to open up some running lanes, that's kind of a worry.
Yeah, to kind of quote Jake Hatch last week, is Connor Pay is the heart and life of this offense. He's the guy that you want out there and you need out there. It's going to be interesting to see how the O-line performs within the absence of Connor Pay, and how they fill that gap. But it's also going to be super interesting to see LJ Martin come back and see if he needs to shake up some rust early in the game and see how well LJ Martin can be for this BYU run game, who, like you mentioned, is struggling and just needs to do better, just needs to be better and more consistent.
News from Pete Thamel this morning. We do know who's going to be starting at center today. Pete Thamel said this 3 hours ago. Converted defensive lineman Bruce Mitchell is going to be starting at center today for the Cougars. He was the 3rd-string center to open the season. He started at guard against Kansas State, but this is his first in-game action at center. So hopefully that goes smooth. Of course, they've had the bye week to iron things out. That is a positive, but it always is a little worrisome hearing somebody's first career game at center, because so many things can go wrong on the exchange with the quarterback, and as far as the center calling out the protection calls and things like that. But again, having the bye week should help the Cougars iron this thing out a little bit.
Big test for Bruce Mitchell. Hope that he's up for it. Hope that he can step up into that role and fill in those big shoes left behind by Connor Pay.
No doubt. Let's see how Bruce Mitchell performs. Let's see how the rest of that offensive line and the running game performs. Let's see how those defensive ends perform, as we were talking about earlier. Need a really big game from them to put some pressure on Arizona's quarterback, Noah Fafita. Help limit him, and of course limit Tet McMillan, one of the best receivers in the country. So it's a big ask for BYU today, but paying off big rewards if they can get it done. Looking for the Cougars to go and get their 6th win of the season today.
Absolutely. They go get your 6th win, go be bowl eligible, and like we mentioned last week, man, go reach for the stars. See where this team can take the BYU. See where you can get with this team, and hopefully compete for that Big 12 championship. BYU right now is primed in a good position to look down the road, look down the schedule, and start maybe thinking about having those aspirations to make it to that game.
Again, pregame show kicking off in 1 hour with Jake Hatch and Alex Keary at the Cafe Rio in Provo, live from down there. So, if you have a free Saturday, go check that out. That could be fun. Kickoff is at 2, postgame show to follow after the game. Stay tuned for the best coverage all day today. This is the Saturday show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.